On May 23, 1934, one of the most publicized crime sprees in American history came to a violent end. A young man and woman were shot to death in each other's arms. Clyde Barrow and Bonnie Parker made news for only 2 years, but their mark on American culture has been indelible.
There was almost an aura of lover magic that grew up around this couple. There was an exotic feeling to this term, Bonnie and Clyde.
They were seen by many as a modern-day Romeo and Juliet. Misunderstood lovers cast out by society, fighting back any way they could.
They were just a couple of kids in love, very young, and they didn't do all the killings that they said they did.
Hollywood has exploited this romantic image. Every movie that deals with a pair of young lovers pursued by the law invariably gets compared to the real-life adventures of Bonnie and Clyde.
There seems to be a persistent feeling that this was something kind of neat, this boy and girl going against the grain.
They quickly became an American archetype. Why do we continue to hold such a fascination for these two lovers? So passionate in their love, so violent in their crimes. Why do we continue to romanticize and justify their impetuous actions? How has the story of two young lovers, both poor, desperate outlaws in a rural, small-town world, evolved into such sophisticated fare as natural-born killers? In part, it is because Bonnie and Clyde, aware of the legend they were forging, helped cultivate it even as the violence escalated. Bonnie Parker, a self-styled poet, helped shape her romantic image with poems that newspapers of the 30s were only too eager to print. They reveal her flair for melodrama, her love of publicity.
You've read the story of Jesse James, of how he lived and died. If you're still in need of something to read, here's the story of Bonnie and Clyde.
Rogues Gallery is narrated by William DeVay. This episode, Bonnie and Clyde.
Young, reckless, in love. A dangerous combination, even a deadly one when Bonnie Parker and Clyde Barrow get together. Star-crossed lovers with a driving need to survive. Both grow up in poor families, first crossing paths in West Dallas, Texas. Born on March 24, 1909, Clyde is one of 7 children born to illiterate farmers Henry and Kumi Barrow. His family gives up their farm in 1921, moving to West Dallas where they buy into a mom-and-pop gas station. Bonnie is born on October 1, 1910. To a brick mason and his wife, Charles and Emma. When Mr. Parker dies 5 years later, Mrs. Parker takes her brood to live in West Dallas. After her father's death, the young girl grows even closer to her mother. Family will always be important to both Bonnie and Clyde as they continually risk capture to see their loved ones over the years. Clyde's family settles into a trashier section of town than Bonnie's, but it's the best they can afford. It's an unsavory atmosphere of bootleggers, prostitutes, and pimps. Petty crime flourishes. Nobody on the side of the law cares as long as they get their payoffs. None of this is lost on Clyde. To him, it seems easier to steal $1 than to earn one. Clyde also develops a taste for the good life.
He was a man who had great lust for fast cars, beautiful clothes, women.
Clyde, small in stature, stands just 5'5" and weighs about 125 pounds.
Clyde's size very well may have been a factor in him becoming a criminal. There is a term that's bandied a lot, the Napoleonic complex, a feeling of inferiority because of diminutive size.
By 1926, America's keeping cool with Coolidge in the White House. Speakeasies flourish. National League Baseball celebrates its 50th anniversary. Valentino is Hollywood's hottest heartthrob. 1 in 6 U.S. citizens now owns an automobile. Secretary of Commerce Herbert Hoover announces that Americans are enjoying the highest standard of living in the nation's history. But the Barrows share none of this seemingly carefree lifestyle, nor do the Parkers. Unlike Clyde, Bonnie is fairly well educated. She likes attention and often recites poetry when neighbors come by. She doesn't start dating till she's 15, but at 16 impetuously marries school friend Roy Thornton, also 16. Impulsively, she has a tattoo put on her inner thigh to declare her devotion to Roy. Roy doesn't share such devotion, and within a year they separate. Shortly afterwards, in 1929, Roy pulls a 5-year prison sentence for burglary. Deciding it would be too cruel to divorce him when he's down on his luck, she technically remains Mrs. Roy Thornton till the day she dies. After finishing high school, Bonnie finds work at the local diner to support herself and her mother. At the same time, Clyde and his brother Buck drift into petty burglaries. 1930, the first full year of the Depression, plunges the economy into chaos. Banks fail. Crops fail. Many industries fail. The celebrated American spirit develops a definite edge. Americans' growing feeling that government and financial institutions have let them down leads to a strange fascination with criminals. Texans are no exception. They have a history of embracing rebels. Clyde often compares his own heroics to those of Jesse and Frank James, fiercely independent individuals like himself. In many ways, Bonnie and Clyde embody these willful, impetuous rebels later in their own notorious crime spree. In January 1930, Clyde and Buck break into a garage in Denton, Texas. Shot in the leg, Buck is captured while Clyde escapes. On January 5th, he heads for a girlfriend's house to hide out. It just so happens that Bonnie is staying there as well. Meeting for the first time, it's love at first sight. Their attraction, so immediate and intense, lights sparks that neither has ever experienced.
They call them cold-blooded killers. They say they are heartless and mean. But I say this with pride. I once knew Clyde when he was honest and upright and clean.
Knowing that he's a fugitive but thinking he's innocent, Bonnie takes him home to meet her mother on the night of February 12th. While there, he's captured by the police who have learned his whereabouts. He's arrested and taken to the county jail in Waco, Texas. Though Mrs. Parker thinks Bonnie should cut her ties to Clyde right now, Bonnie throws caution to the wind and accompanies Clyde's mother to Waco to be near him. During a visit on March 8th, Clyde asks her to smuggle in a gun so he can break out of jail. This is a turning point in Bonnie's life. Is she willing to break the law, to risk going to jail herself if she's caught? Or will she try to persuade him to stick it out, afraid he'll be killed in a jailbreak? With Clyde urging her on, she agrees to risk it. Her own freedom seems to matter less to her than Clyde's. She recklessly breaks into a house where Clyde knows there's a gun and ransacks the place to find it. The next day, she nervously walks past the jailhouse guards with a large weapon barely concealed on her tiny 4'10" frame. Perhaps her very daring leads to success. Her passion fuels Clyde's actions.
I think Clyde would not have been as successful without Bonnie. After he met Bonnie, perhaps to impress her, he seemed to be more focused on his career of crime.
Within hours, Clyde and 5 others escape. With the law on his trail, There's no time for Clyde to hook up with Bonnie. Stealing a car, he rushes off and heads north, crossing state lines. 9 days later, police recapture Clyde in Ohio. With his added offenses, Clyde pulls a 14-year prison sentence and soon experiences the full force of Texas justice at the Eastham Prison Farm.
But the laws fooled around and taken him down and locking him up in a cell, till he said to me, "I'll never be free, so I'll meet a few of them in hell."
Eastham is a place where guards rule unchecked. Inmates toil cutting sugarcane and picking cotton, grueling jobs that are physically exhausting. For Clyde, who's small, the work proves especially hard. Prisoners are personally abused. Atrocities abound. Finally, Clyde snaps. One night he kills a trustee who's been brutally sodomizing him. He smuggles a piece of pipe into the prison and beats him to death in a dark corner of the ward. It's a profound experience for the young man. Though he's never accused of the crime, killing a man changes Clyde forever.
In the words of Ralph Fultz, turned Clyde from a schoolboy to a rattlesnake right in front of his eyes.
After almost 2 years of hard labor at Eastham under harsh conditions, Clyde can't take it anymore. Feeling he's been pushed too far, he takes desperate measures. It's a side of Clyde that others will fall victim to in the future. He gets another convict to chop off 2 of his toes, hoping his injury will gain him an easier work detail. Ironically, his timing couldn't be worse. While he's in the prison hospital recuperating, he gets word that he's been pardoned. His mother's efforts to get her son an early release have finally paid off. Bonnie has been writing to Clyde in prison, but they haven't seen each other for over 2 years. The reunion comes almost immediately upon his return in February 1932. When Bonnie sees Clyde, it's as if he had never been away. Together again, they pledge their undying devotion. Clyde tries a hand at various jobs, but soon claims the police won't give him a chance.
I'm just going to have to go out and do what they're accusing me of. And I'm not going back to that hellhole Eastham. They're going to have to kill me first. I swear it, they're just going to have to kill me.
Prison leaves Clyde a changed person, bitter and hardened from the injustices he's endured. From now on, he seems to prefer the adventure and lure of quick money despite the risks involved. Knowing of her mother's opposition to Clyde, Bonnie lies and tells her that she's got a job in Houston, then runs off with Clyde instead. Clyde forms a gang with Ray Hamilton, a car thief that he's known since childhood, and Ralph Fultz, a former inmate and friend from Eastham Prison. They begin making raids on small-town stores and banks. On April 19, 1932, the 4 of them are spotted while trying to rob a gun shop. Chased by the police, the 4 get separated. Clyde leaves Bonnie and Ralph Fultz, figuring he'll steal a car in return for them. Bonnie and Ralph spend the night in a ditch. The next day, they're cornered by a posse member and give themselves up. Ralph gets charged and sent to prison. Bonnie's case is dismissed on June 17th by the grand jury for lack of evidence. It's the only time that Bonnie ever spends behind bars.
Another member of the gang, Ralph Fultz, had confessed that he was the main one and that Bonnie was just along for the ride. And so Bonnie kept quiet and said she was unaware that what was going on. And Fultz, to use the term of the time, took the fall.
Meanwhile, Clyde and Ray rob a store in Hillsboro, Texas, killing the owner, John Butcher. It's most likely that Hamilton fires the shot in a rash moment when challenged by Butcher. But it's Clyde who's positively ID'd by Butcher's widow. Now he's wanted for homicide.
Now Bonnie and Clyde are the Barrow Gang. I'm sure you all have read how they rob and steal, and those who squeal are usually found dying or dead.
For Clyde and Hamilton, it's just the beginning. They set off on a crime spree, pulling off a series of car thefts and burglaries that carry them across state lines. In Stringtown, Oklahoma, they take time off to attend a local dance. When two policemen confront them as they sit in a stolen car, both Clyde and Hamilton open fire without warning, killing one of the officers. They manage to escape, but Clyde knows that if he's caught, he'll surely be executed. From now on, Clyde's crime rampage takes on an even more desperate aspect. He no longer has anything to lose but his life. After the deputy's murder, Clyde goes looking for Bonnie. The reunion takes place on August 6th, when Clyde sends a friend to pick up Bonnie at the Parker home in Dallas to join him. Now that Clyde's considered a dangerous murderer, he's even more of a risk to be around. Yet Bonnie's passion for Clyde reaches beyond her better judgment and concern for her safety.
There's not that many couples that formed a crime career and were able to sustain it for the period of time that Bonnie and Clyde did. Being a man and woman team and making the papers quite often, which made them rather famous outside the state, probably doesn't have a parallel in criminal history.
A newsboy once said to his buddy, "I wish old Clyde would get jumped. In these hard times, we've got a few dimes. If 5 or 6 cops would get bumped."
Bonnie is a woman with an obsession, and that obsession is Clyde Barrow. From this moment on, they will never be apart. With a policeman and a store owner dead, Clyde has to get away. Bonnie comes up with an escape plan. She has an aunt in Carlsbad, New Mexico. No one would think of looking for them there. The visit to Bonnie's aunt in Carlsbad proves a disaster. Almost as soon as they arrive on August 15th, the local sheriff becomes suspicious of their out-of-state license plate. When he runs a check, he discovers it's a stolen car. When the officer investigates, shots ring out. Before anyone's hurt, Clyde disarms the lawman, Sheriff Joe Johns, and kidnaps him instead.
The kidnappings that they conducted were probably done to get the word out so that they would be in the papers. They were seeking fame. They were seeking notoriety. And they knew that a kidnapped victim would be interviewed. And I'm sure at the time that there was erroneous information.
With the identity of the outlaws soon known, it's assumed that Sheriff Johns will turn up dead. There's great surprise when he's released unharmed the next day in San Antonio, Texas. If one event launches the legend of Bonnie and Clyde, it's the kidnapping of Sheriff Johns. Sometimes they kill, sometimes they seem to toy with their victims. What does it mean? Do they only kill when cornered?
Could have been for a couple of reasons. Possibly this was, again, part of the Napoleonic complex. Clyde was exercising his power to choose not to kill. On the other hand, there is some evidence to indicate that he only killed when necessary.
He'd try and talk his way out of a situation. He would try and drive out of a situation, or he would try and abduct the person in the situation. If that didn't work, if he got caught totally by surprise, then that rattlesnake appeared and he'd strike with his guns.
Now on the lam, the pair continue to rob small-town stores throughout the fall across the Southwest. On the move, Clyde kills again. He guns down butcher Howard Hall during the botched robbery of a grocery store.
With a gun, he was almost like Wild Bill Hickok. He carried a sawed-off shotgun strung over his right shoulder under his coat. If he wanted to, he could pull that gun up and shoot within a matter of seconds. So he could be extremely competent in a gun battle.
His talent with guns feeds his growing confidence in any confrontation. He's beginning to reveal a sense of invincibility that could one day betray him. As 1932 draws to a close, Bonnie and Clyde still elude capture. Sticking to back roads and tourist camps, people just don't recognize them. It's up to local law enforcement, often understaffed and ill-qualified, to go after the gang.
Quite a number of the small-town police were probably afraid of Bonnie and Clyde because they lacked the training. They got their job either by the fact that they were somebody's brother-in-law or they were elected. They had absolutely no law enforcement training whatsoever. A lot of elections for sheriff were nothing more than popularity contests. Consequently, when they had to go up against a criminal of the caliber of Bonnie and Clyde, they were totally unprepared.
The FBI has no power to launch a manhunt. It's not until 1934 that it becomes a federal crime to rob banks or cross state lines to avoid prosecution, or that FBI special agents are granted full police powers. Nor does Clyde just target banks. He also robs oil company payrolls. As the need for gasoline grows with the increased demand for cars, oil wells in Texas and Oklahoma flourish. Located in barren areas, often far from major cities, oil payrolls make easier targets. In the years before the government protects personal accounts, Clyde feels that robbing small-town banks means robbing poor people's life savings. Clyde can relate to poor people. He's been surrounded by them all his life. Oil wells owned by wealthy corporations can afford the loss. Bonnie and Clyde also rob national armories to keep up their own well-stocked arsenal, stealing the military's Browning automatics, among other weapons.
As far as Bonnie, I don't think Bonnie ever shot anybody or ever had a gun in her hand because Bonnie was not into guns. Clyde always talked about Bonnie being scared of guns.
Bonnie is never known to have fired a gun. In fact, she was terrified of guns.
In December, Bonnie and Clyde joined their families for a Christmas reunion. While there, they welcomed 16-year-old W.D. Jones to the gang. He's a neighbor boy who's known Clyde since he was 5 years old. On Christmas Day, as they head out of town, Jones murders a young husband and father as the man tries to keep Clyde from stealing his new car. A week later, on January 6, 1933, Clyde kills a sheriff's deputy when he runs into a police ambush at a friend's house. As their notoriety spreads from such deeds, the young lovers gain a reputation for ruthlessness.
There's lots of untruths to these write-ups. They're not so ruthless as that. Their nature is raw, they hate all law, stool pigeons, spotters, and rats.
As their fame spreads, Emma Parker begs her daughter to quit, but Bonnie's become resigned to the inevitable fate that one day awaits her.
Her mother pleaded with her to come in off the road. She said, the state of Texas has never executed a woman in the 20th century. And Bonnie said, I can't leave Clyde. And her mother said, but you're going to be killed. And she said, I know that, but I can't leave Clyde. The fact that Bonnie's father died when she was so young very well may have been a factor in her bonding so strongly with Clyde Barrow. Here was a young man who was a possible father figure. He was very strong, was trying to prove himself, already reasonably well known in West Dallas as a small-time gangster. Perhaps this was an attraction to her.
Well, Bonnie and Clyde were really in love with each other. I don't know why they were so in love, but they really was.
Clyde's driving ability is one reason that it's so hard for police to catch up with him. Time and again, Clyde outdrives his pursuers. His M.O. is to get as far away from the crime scene as possible, and his love of cars, especially the Ford V8, becomes legendary.
Clyde Barrow loved Fords, and especially the V8 Ford, because the V8 Ford, remember, was one of the first automobiles that had an all-steel body. And the V8 engine would go for indefinite periods without repair.
Clyde always steals a Ford V8 whenever one is available. The steel body proves more bulletproof than other cars, and the powerful engine can attain higher speeds than most police cars, sometimes as much as 100 miles per hour.
There was one person who was abducted that told me that all the guns in the car didn't scare her as much as the way he drove.
Clyde so admires Henry Ford's product that he writes him a letter.
Dear Sir, While I still have got breath in my lungs, I will tell you what a dandy car you make. I have drove Fords exclusively when I could get away with one. The Ford has got every other car skinned, and even if my business hasn't been strictly legal, it don't hurt nothing to tell you what a fine car you make in the V8.
Clyde also collects license plates that he cleverly uses to conceal their identity as they travel. On March 22nd, Buck Barrow finally gets paroled after a 4-year stretch in the dreaded Eastham prison. First, he reunites with his wife Blanche.
Buck was going with a girl, and Blanche happened to be a friend of hers. Blanche lived in Oklahoma, and she come up to visit this girl that Buck was going with, and they happened to meet, and Buck and her kind of fell in love with each other, so he kind of taken over her, and they got married. And I love Blanche, and my whole family loved Blanche. She was a sweet girl. When Buck escaped, well, her and my mother both talked to him and got him to go back to prison because Blanche wanted him to do good, and I think really he wanted to do good.
Buck makes plans to rendezvous with his wife Blanche and Bonnie and Clyde in Fort Smith, Arkansas. As the older brother, he worries that it's his fault Clyde has strayed to a life of crime. Blanche opposes the meeting. She and Buck are on their way to a new life, working on her father's farm. As it turns out, Blanche Barrow's fears about meeting her notorious relatives are well justified. In April, Bonnie and Clyde meet Buck and Blanche Barrow in Fort Smith, Arkansas. Along with W.D. Jones, the two couples take an apartment in Joplin, Missouri. Always on the run, it's the first place in a year where Bonnie has stayed in anything that resembles a home. But their interlude lasts only a few days. When the landlord spots a large arsenal of guns that the Barrow gang carries with them, he alerts police. The law shows up to arrest the outlaws, and an enormous gun battle erupts. 2 lawmen die. In a spectacular feat of daring, Clyde directs the fugitives to blast their way out of the garage with automatic rifles.
If they try to act like citizens and rent a nice little flat, about the 3rd night they're invited to fight by a subgun's rat-a-tat-tat.
Pictures left behind in the Joplin apartment seem to confirm their love of publicity and the fame that follows them. It also reveals a lighter side to their natures.
There's no evidence to indicate that Bonnie was a cigar-smoking gun mom. That was just a joke. And Bonnie was just horsing around, grabbed a cigar, and had pictures made of her with a cigar, not ever dreaming that those pictures would be left behind after a gunfight and be published all over the nation. She hated that picture.
Their escape under such overwhelming odds just reinforces Clyde's claims to invincibility.
He had a almost mythic reputation of being able to shoot his way out or drive his way out or of anything. Anything. He was shot so many times and survived.
Clyde and Buck split up to take the heat off, but agree to meet outside Dallas. Before this can happen, Bonnie and Clyde face their most serious setback. In some ways, it spells the beginning of the end. With Clyde driving at 70 miles an hour, he comes around a bend in the road. Not seeing a sign in time that the bridge is out, he plunges into a deep ravine. Clyde and Jones escape injury, but Bonnie is pinned under the car. Before they can free her, a gas fire ignites, severely burning her right leg. Helped by some local farmers, they get Bonnie out from under the car and into a nearby farmhouse. But when Clyde rejects medical attention for the seriously injured woman, the farmers get suspicious and alert the local sheriff. Clyde gets the drop on the sheriff and his deputy when they arrive. He loads Bonnie into the car along with the 2 lawmen. Later, in a rural spot, he leaves them tied to a tree and drives off to meet up with Buck and Blanche. Together, they hole up in a tourist camp in Kansas while Bonnie recuperates. Burned to the bone in some areas, it's amazing that she doesn't lose her leg or her life to serious infection from the wound. As it is, there's some question as to whether Bonnie ever walks again. While Clyde tenderly nurses Bonnie, Jones and Buck set off to pull several robberies to pay for Bonnie's medical needs, as well as their room and board. In a confrontation in Arkansas, they kill another police officer. Police turn up the heat. The gang moves around, desperate to elude the law while Bonnie slowly recovers. Knowing they have the Barrow gang cornered in a tourist court in Platte City, Missouri, the law, heavily armed, moves in. The sheriff first knocks on their door and demands their surrender. Clyde leaps into action. As in Joplin, Clyde defies the odds, loads everyone into the car, and makes a break for it, heading straight through the circle of lawmen. This time, the fugitives aren't so lucky. Buck takes 2 bullets in the head. Shattering glass catches Blanche in the eye. Clyde manages to get away. But with Bonnie incapacitated and Buck and Blanche seriously wounded, time's running out. Forced to slow down his driving, Clyde searches for a hiding place. He thinks he's found it in the middle of a densely wooded park near Dexter, Iowa. But this time, he's got a determined posse on his trail. Over 100 men track them to the refuge. At dawn, Clyde sees the posse closing in. A rain of gunfire destroys both the gang's cars. Desperate, they try to escape on foot. Hit several times, a dying Buck is caught, a cowering Blanche at his side. Though hit in the leg and arm, Clyde once more manages to pull off a miraculous escape, carrying Bonnie and accompanied by W.D. Jones, who's been shot in the chest and face. Clyde steals a car and vanishes. They have cheated death again.
The road was so dimly lighted, there were no highway signs to guide, but they made up their minds if all roads were blind, they wouldn't give up till they died.
Clyde's brother Buck dies at a nearby hospital a few days later on July 29th. Blanche ends up in prison.
When my brother Buck was killed, I do believe Clyde made the funeral, and everybody says that they, but I do believe that Clyde was there at Buck's funeral. I think he wore a wig and a woman's dress when he come to the funeral.
Bonnie and Clyde lie low, recovering from their wounds throughout the late summer and early fall. There are rumored sightings. Crimes they don't commit are attributed to them.
If a policeman is killed in Dallas and they have no clue or guide, if they can't find a fiend, just wipe the slate clean and hang it on Bonnie and Clyde.
W.D. Jones leaves Bonnie and Clyde after the Iowa shootout, and that November, he's captured without incident in Houston. He actually expresses relief at being arrested. Though only 17, Jones has lost his fascination with a life of crime.
I have been indicted along with Clyde and Bonnie for the murder of Malcolm Davis, Fort Worth Deputy Sheriff. I was forced along under threats of death with Clyde Barrow through many of his gun battles and saw him kill 5 men. Clyde Barrow never seemed to care for killing anyone. All he thought of was himself. That's the reason I tried to escape. Just soon kill me as anyone.
While Jones was a willing participant in the gang, Clyde tells him to say anything he thinks will help him get off or lessen his sentence. It's certainly too late to matter to Clyde.
W.D. Jones, when he got out and everything, Clyde told him to come home, and because they didn't know who he was, and to come home and he wouldn't get in no trouble. But when he did come home, well, Clyde told him he can tell anything he wants to tell, that, he don't care what he tells about him, and that's why W.D. told so much stuff about Clyde, because he, was trying to save himself, and Clyde had told him he didn't care, but of course he was with Clyde, and Clyde didn't chain him up and tie him up and all that stuff.
Once Jones is in custody, some question the nature of his relationship with the couple. There are rumors about Clyde's sexuality.
We don't know where those stories started. W.D. Jones once said he didn't even know where it started from. The fact of the matter was that he didn't have any problem with women at all. Clyde Barrow did not. And I interviewed one of Clyde's early girlfriends, and she said Clyde didn't have any trouble at all with women. That she was quite frank about that.
In fact, the evidence indicates that he fathered a child at one point. He was a great womanizer. He dated several girls. There was no indication that he was ever interested in boys. The only possible connection to this could have been that at one point he and Bonnie were driving through several towns and not wanting to be recognized, Clyde apparently put on a blonde wig. And knowing that the police would have been looking for a man and a woman, but not two women, this is entirely possible, the source of all that.
In late November, the pair risk a meeting with their families outside Dallas to celebrate Mrs. Barrow's birthday. Unfortunately, a suspicious farmer alerts the police. Once more, Bonnie and Clyde are caught in an ambush. Fleeing the scene, both are hit in the knees but manage to escape. Nothing is heard of them for the rest of the year. 1934 begins with renewed hope for a downtrodden American public. Prohibition is over. President Franklin Roosevelt promises a New Deal. Cole Porter proclaims in his Broadway show Anything Goes, and a small film about a poor guy who ends up with an heiress catapults Clark Gable into superstardom. When Bonnie and Clyde reappear in early 1934, the event is as spectacular as any in their career. Clyde decides that Bonnie and he can't go it alone. He plans a breakout at Eastham Prison Farm to spring their former partner, Ray Hamilton. He plants 2 guns in the brush near Hamilton's work detail. According to plan, Hamilton finds the guns and opens fire, killing 1 prison guard and wounding another. 4 cons escape with Hamilton. 2 of them, Henry Methvin and Joe Palmer, join Hamilton in a nearby car where Bonnie and Clyde are waiting. They become part of the infamous Barrow gang.
The fact that one of those guards was killed probably made no difference to Barrow, because the way Barrow put it to Fultz, he made it clear, let's kill every damn one of these guards. He hated those guards. And that was that one thing that Ralph said about prison changing Clyde from a schoolboy to a rattlesnake.
The road gets dimmer and dimmer. Sometimes you can hardly see. But it's fight man to man and do all you can, for they know they can never be free.
Bonnie and Clyde's sheer audacity in orchestrating the prison break seals their doom. Outraged over the guard's killing, Director of Texas Prisons Lee Simmons decides it's time for the law to take serious action. With the governor's permission, he creates a new job, Special Investigator for the Texas prison system. His task? Stop Bonnie and Clyde, no matter what it takes, no matter how it's done. The man who gets the job is former Texas Ranger Frank Hamer. Hamer vows that Bonnie and Clyde will be dead in a matter of weeks. Other lawmen have been tracking Bonnie and Clyde. But Hamer decides that following the gang is useless. Instead, Hamer looks at where Bonnie and Clyde have been to determine where they're going. Studying the pattern of their crimes, he sees that they generally move from Dallas north to Oklahoma and Kansas, down through Missouri into Louisiana, and then back to Dallas. He knows that success means intercepting them somewhere on the circuit. Hamer decides that the key is to lie in wait ahead of them, but to do this, he needs to get someone within their circle to betray them. The Judas in their midst turns out to be the father of one of the cons they broke out of prison, Henry Methvin. Henry Methvin fits well into the Barrow gang, making a name for himself by participating in the slayings of 3 policemen and the kidnapping of a 4th. Along with Bonnie and Clyde, Methvin joins the FBI's list as one of the most wanted criminals in America. Hamer continues monitoring the gang's movements, figuring from their pattern that they might be heading for the Methvin residence in Louisiana. So Hamer approaches Methvin's father, offering his son immunity if he'll help set up Bonnie and Clyde. Unbeknownst to Henry Methvin, his father agrees. When Bonnie and Clyde are spotted heading towards northern Louisiana, Frank Hamer realizes all the pieces are now in place. he enlists the aid of 5 other lawmen for the ambush. As luck has it, Henry accidentally gets separated from Bonnie and Clyde and tells his father his plans to meet up with them. Methvin's father, in turn, tells Hamer that the outlaws plan to rendezvous on a lonely stretch of Highway 80 between Arcadia and Gibbsland. The posse decides to use Methvin's logging truck as a decoy. With the truck parked nearby, the posse hides in the bushes to wait. Unsuspecting of the impending danger, Bonnie and Clyde's car slows to look for Methvin. As the pair's infamous luck finally runs out, the lawmen set about their grim task. Perhaps if Clyde had not always been so sure of shooting his way out, it might have been handled differently. As it is, the lawmen never offer to let them surrender. It all happens so quickly that Bonnie and Clyde never even draw their weapons. Well over 100 bullets are fired at the notorious pair.
For people who were great fans of Frank Hamer, this seemed like this wouldn't be what this man would do. On the other hand, Hamer knew that everyone who ordered Bonnie and Clyde to halt got killed. And so he was responsible for a 6-man posse. I feel like Hamer felt like, I need to get these folks before they get some of us.
Bonnie and Clyde both had stated several times that they would not be taken alive.
Bonnie had always resigned herself to their inevitable fate.
They don't think they're tough or desperate. They know the law always wins. They've been shot at before, but they do not ignore that death is the wages of sin.
The arsenal found in their car is truly staggering. 3 Browning automatic rifles, 2 sawed-off shotguns, 4 .45 caliber automatic pistols, a .45 Colt automatic, 2 .38 automatics, and thousands of rounds of ammunition. The display of firepower certainly backs up Bonnie and Clyde's claims that they'd never surrender peacefully. It is anything but a peaceful end. Clyde is 25, Bonnie is 24. The violence is over. Bonnie and Clyde draw as much attention in death as they did in life. They're not buried together, as Bonnie wished, but receive separate funerals in separate cemeteries. Extensive media coverage records the thousands of people who file past their open caskets to get a final glimpse of the desperados.
It was a pretty big deal. They stampeded. You couldn't hardly get to the funeral yourself because of the people, the sightseers and things coming. And my brother had to stand at the door and try to keep some of them out when, of the funeral, because they just stampeded it so bad.
Someday they'll go down together, and they'll bury them side by side. To few it'll be grief, to the law a relief, but it's death for Bonnie and Clyde.
Bonnie and Clyde made a significant impact on the American psyche. In Binville Parish, Louisiana, a stone marker was erected on the site of their execution. There is a haunted quality about this notorious pair, an indefinable something that keeps them in our consciousness. Certainly a big part of this was their fatalism. They were going down a road that could only end in violence. The public knew that they would come to a grisly end and played the guessing game of where and when. Bonnie was determined to die with Clyde. A female criminal was unusual enough, but there was something sad about one who seemed to fearlessly embrace death. But if she couldn't live without Clyde, why not die with him? Such fatalism truly gives this tale a tragic Romeo and Juliet quality. Bonnie and Clyde remain an enigma. There are so many contradictions. She wrote poetry, he played the saxophone. Sometimes they killed, sometimes they let their victims go. They loved their families and risked their lives on several occasions just to see them for a few minutes. But they didn't hesitate to end the happiness of other families by killing their husbands, fathers, and sons. Perhaps ambiguity is the key to their allure. Even their final moments are punctuated by that ambiguity. They died in an embrace even as an act of violence tore them apart. As Shakespeare said, "These violent delights have violent ends." The story of Bonnie and Clyde is truly a love story, a passion bathed in violence that could only end the way it did.